So we're going to talk about tax, and we're going to talk about value added tax, VAT. What happened with Uber? So you may have seen in the news that Uber have now been essentially, well, I wouldn't use the word fined, but they've been charged 1.5 billion of VAT, which they've not paid to the UK government. We're going to talk about why that's the case and the implications of going VAT registered for your business, and why you may want to consider doing it, why you may not want to consider doing it, and how it normally plays out in practice. Most entrepreneurs understand very little about VAT, and most entrepreneurs, they're quite scared of VAT. When they realise their business is going to hit that VAT threshold, which is £85,000 at the time of recording in the UK, they're concerned because they have to put up their prices. They have to raise everything by 20%, which is the VAT rate, or they have to take a hit on their margins and incorporate it back into their current prices and reduce all their prices by 20%, which has a huge impact on the bottom line and on profit. So we'll talk about Uber. What happened? So Uber, as we all know, it's a firm we all know and love. It's become absolutely huge over the last 10, 15 or so years. I can't remember how long it was ago when I first got that invite code where you got £10 for your first Uber ride, and it all sounded too good to be true. But it's obviously become a staple. It's become a huge part of everything we do. And last week, it was actually hit with a fine by the UK government for £1.5 billion of unpaid value added tax, or VAT. What happened? In 2016, two Uber employees, well, not employees at the time, two Uber self-employed contractors went to Uber and went to an employment tribunal and said, we are employees, we're due holiday pay, sick pay, and everything that comes with the benefits of being employees. And Uber said, no, you're not, you're self-employed contractors. Skip forward a few years, and after a lot of back and forth with the courts, after a lot of escalations and appeals, it has now been ruled, in fact, that if you are an Uber driver, you are employed by the company. And you're not just employed for the time you're doing a journey, you're employed for the entire time you are logged in to the Uber app. So what's the significance of this? Like, why does this matter, and what's this got to do with VAT and value added tax? Well, it's all to do with where revenue is booked. So before, if Uber had its drivers had its way, all of its drivers would be self-employed, and that would mean that every driver essentially has their own revenue, their own cost, their own P&L, if you like, which is very different to every driver just being an employee, just being essentially a cost on Uber's P&L, on Uber's profit and loss. So if we explore the first option, so when the driver is self-employed, then what do the books look like? Well, say if I went and did £20, if I went to spend £20 on Uber, I got a car all the way to, I'd have to go to Manchester. I think I'd have to go to centre of Manchester and back. So it cost me £20. Now, where's that revenue going to go? So I pay £20 to the consumer. I've just paid £20, and that money would go to the driver. So that would go to the driver, and the driver would recognise that as their own income. So the driver on their profit and loss would say income of £20. Uber will then charge the driver a commission. So let's say they take 10% from the drivers. Uber will then charge the driver £2. So that means the driver's P&L shows £20 income, £2 cost, and £18 net profit, or gross profit probably, but profit. Uber's P&L then says £2 income. Now, Uber are likely probably having to charge VAT on that £2 as well to the driver. So Uber may have to charge £2.40 or whatever. So it might have to be a slightly higher commission because the VAT is coming from the driver. But the key point is they're charging on that income. The VAT they're charging is far, far lower. So the VAT they're charging is far, far lower, and the VAT they're therefore paying to HMRC is far, far lower because they're taking a commission. Now shift that forward to the tribunal's ruling the fact that the drivers of Uber are not actually self-employed, but they're actually employed. This changes things because those drivers no longer have a P&L. All they have is the money that comes in from Uber as their employed salary, which is very interesting. So these drivers are now actually employed by Uber, which means all of the revenue. So when I pay for my £20 for my trip, it's no longer the driver's revenue, it's Uber's revenue. So that means before, when I pay £20, Uber booked £2 against its revenue line, its income line. Now, Uber takes the full £20 against its revenue line and then pays the driver the 18. So rather than the driver getting the 20, Uber taking 2, Uber now has to have £20 against its income and then pay the driver 18. Now, that means that the amount of income that Uber is now taking is increased, which means its VAT, the amount of value-added tax which it should have been billing all this time, it should have been paying to HMRC, is going to be huge. To make this clear, when the revenue goes against the driver, you have to earn over £85,000. You have to be earning over £85,000 as like a self-employed professional, as a business, to register for VAT. And the reality is, the drivers wouldn't have done that. They wouldn't have been in that boat. But now, Uber's obviously earning more than £85,000 a year of revenue. So every single bit of revenue that gets booked to Uber, they're now having to basically take the VAT on that and then pay that to HMRC. They're basically having to charge VAT on the journey. But because the last X or so years they've not been doing it, there's basically a huge deficit that they've not been paying. So there's a huge amount of VAT that's now owed to the UK government. So it's very interesting. Like VAT is a bit of a game that can be played. You know, it's very, but the government are very much on it. They know what they're doing with it. And it's incredible how just a small bit of financial engineering or small structure in the operations of a company can make a huge difference to its VAT liability. If we think about VAT in practice, so for those of you that are small business owners, medium business owners, large business owners, a lot of the people that I speak to are property business owners, and some of you own property investment companies. Now, if you own property investment, a lot of the rental income you achieve is non-VATable, so you often don't have to apply for VAT. But those of you that own agencies, own training companies, own all these other type of companies with VATable income, you often hit a point where you're excited, you've been growing the business, and you're going to have to go over the VAT threshold. The VAT threshold at the time of recording is £85,000. So what do we do? Like, is there a way to get around it? And what are the realities of hitting that VAT threshold in practice? Well, to answer the question, is there a way of getting around not registering for VAT when you're going to hit the VAT threshold? I would argue the answer is no. There are some creative accountants out there. There are tax accountants out there that may advise you split certain companies out, you restructure certain companies. If you've mixed a trading company, or maybe you've mixed 2 trading companies together when they're a bit smaller. Now you might want to split them out to keep them separate so that neither of them hits the 85,000, but they'd have to be materially different companies. So there are some elements there you could potentially do. But in general, if your business is one business and there's no ability to split out, you can't really avoid hitting that VAT threshold. But there are a few considerations. Number one is, should you fear hitting that VAT threshold? Because one of the biggest concerns business owners tend to have, or entrepreneurs tend to have, is when they hit that VAT threshold, they're going to have to put their price up and all their customers would go. The reality, like I've worked with a number of entrepreneurs as we've gone through changing normally their agency from being a non-registered agency to a VAT registered agency, and the reality, it doesn't really have a material impact in practice. All your prices have to go up by 20%, but most of your clients expect it, they understand it, and as long as it's explained in a way which explains that you're becoming a bigger company, you're going to be more reliable, you're going to be around for a long period of time, you're going to get increased service levels. In general, I've not seen such a shake-off. Like, you don't tend to lose clients as a result of going VAT registered in general. And often what you'll find is, actually, when you go VAT registered, you attract a new class of clients who has a VAT registered company. And they're on like a different income level, so they're often happy. They don't really care about the VAT because they can claim the VAT back once they've given it to you. So they can claim the VAT back, and you find you do often appeal to a higher caliber of clients. So in general, if you're concerned about hitting that VAT threshold and going through it, I would just really consider, like, I just wouldn't be worried. Just strategically take your time, phase that approach to VAT, bring up your prices, speak to all your customers, and generally people are quite accepting of it. There's a minimum amount you can do. Another element I would consider though is it actually worth going over the VAT threshold? So is it actually worth going over the 85? Now, I would not. There's two sentiments here. One would be don't let the tail wag the dog. So whenever we talk about tax, don't let a tax efficient scheme or strategy impact your business too heavily. You need to run the business first and think about tax later. You want tax to be optimized. You want to do what you can to kind of keep it in check and keep it as minimal as possible. But don't let tax be a driving force of how you operate your business, because that will just create a lot of mess and you'll lose the efficiency of the tax by the inefficiencies you create in your business. But what I'd say is, if you operate like a relatively low margin business, and by going, your plan is to go up to £90,000 of revenue per year, and at the moment you're on 80, I probably wouldn't bother. I would try my best to kind of keep that business more in the 80k kind of mark, because yeah, you're gonna bring an extra 10k per year. But say if that business is like 10%, 12% margin, then it's not going to be worth it for all of the extra work you're going to have to do for all of your clients, putting all your price up by 20%. So I wouldn't bother going over becoming VAT registered unless you've really got the desire and drive to do so, to go a lot further if you've got a low margin business. If you've got a high margin business, if you operate at 50, 60, 7% net margin, then going over by 10 grand may not be a bad idea. But where I would say the sweet spot would be is to go well over it. I think I would probably not dance around in the middle. I probably wouldn't dance around at 85 to 100. But if you're going to start going to the more like 100, 150, 200, 300 level, 300k level, and then plus, VAT registered is just part of the journey. It's something you're going to have to do, and it's something I would do. It's definitely worth it when you get to the other side. So to summarize, some top tips. So to summarize, Uber's situation is all around structure, and generally don't get too complicated or don't rely on a complicated structure. Generally, it's always substance over form. What it looks like it generally is. So don't try and create a complex structure to get around that, because you'll probably get caught out. If you're going to if you're worried about becoming VAT registered, don't. Generally, your clients are fine about it, and you often attract a higher caliber of client that has a VAT registered company as you go over the hill. Go hard or go home. Don't sit around in the middle. Don't sit around the 85 to 100 grand revenue mark. Go well past that. Go much into the six figures if you're going to go VAT registered. And once you've got the VAT set up, just make sure you're accounting for a property properly. There's some great automations on things like Zero. There's you are going to have to do your VAT returns, accrue the VAT money, pay it all to HMRC, and don't create any VAT black holes in your business. I hope that's of value. Any questions, any support I can offer you, please comment in the comment below, and I'll do whatever I can to support and help.